morale is very low there.
I thought quietly in the summer that we could be really good this season.
And there seemed to be concerns about Blackburn going into this season. I was putting them in the relegation mix.
I feel a bit sorry for Plymouth. I feel a bit sorry for Wayne Rooney.
He could be managing 11 bin bags and he'd find points in the Football League. Hello guys, welcome back to the Sportsman Untitled. We are here ready to analyse all of the action from the opening weekend of the EFL. I've got Sheffield Wednesday fan Kris Voakes with me and Birmingham City League One expert now, Conor Keane, with me as well. So we're going to dive into the action and crack right into it. Right, some very eye-catching results in the Championship from the opening weekend. Let's start with Oxford 2, Norwich City 0. I mean, Norwich going into this game, we have kind of high expectations of them this season. New manager, some players in the mix. But the John Rowe situation, Conor, let's start with you. It seemed like he was in the starting 11 for this game, but had a meeting with the manager in the morning and said, I'm not playing. Because there's a move to Marseille on the horizon, but it seemed to kind of overshadow everything for Norwich.
Well, with Rowe, it feels like he's kind of been leaning towards going out the door for the last few weeks. I think there was interest from Leeds like last week or the week before, and obviously with Marseille coming in, it doesn't help that this situation unfolded right before the first game of the season. If it was late towards the end of August and you're coming up to the transfer deadline day, you think, okay, the circumstances might be different, but to do that before you've even kicked a ball of the new season, I think it's just, for the general morale of the fans and the teammates, it's just shocking, especially after they've already lost Gabriel Sara, one of the best players in the Championship last year. It's a very tough start for Norwich, and obviously the result to go hand in hand with that is just, morale is very low there.
A difficult start for Johannes Hoff-Thorup as well there, Kris.
Yeah, and it was a strange one because Oxford were really well drilled. They seemed to know exactly what their jobs were, whereas Norwich, individually and collectively, just looked completely lost. At least you saw Borja Sainz walking around really frustrated within the first 15-20 minutes. Like, that set the tone, and Josh Sargent had made moves and like the ball never came to him, and it was just like they didn't know what each other was supposed to be doing, whereas Oxford were the complete opposite. Cameron Brannigan was fantastic, and Will Voakes going in there has kind of really freed him up, and they looked like a Championship ready side and then some.
I think this is where playing a newly promoted team from League One is really difficult at the start of the season, because they are well organised, they know what they're doing, they're taking momentum into the season, and you could see this playing Oxford at home, away from home first game is a really tough one. So I think when you're looking at the promoted teams, they've got to have a good start, and Oxford have done exactly that. Yeah,
they have, and on paper you thought Norwich City would have been a very tough, return to the Championship, and as Kris has already mentioned, they were by far the better sides. Obviously everyone knew their roles and stuff, and obviously for them now, that first win coming so early, that is huge for their survival hopes already, and obviously they just want to take that momentum now into next weekend, where hopefully they can build on that with their first away game.
I suppose to an extent as well, Oxford had to come up like that because they're not packed with stars, so the one thing they're going to have is the togetherness and the ability to win home games and stuff like that. So I think if they'd lost 2-0, you'd have been worried about, exactly what they're going to bring to the Championship this season. But the fact that they've got that from day one is a great sign.
And we'll round this game off. Do you think Norwich are in trouble of kind of wasting this season, in terms of, we thought there might be promotion top 6 contenders in there and thereabouts? Looks like they're now losing 2 key players. Kris, do you think it's kind of a bit negative around Norwich right now?
Give me about 45 more games and I'll tell you. But it's hard. It's hard, isn't it? We always were waiting 13, 14 weeks for the season to start, and then we almost want to jump to a few conclusions. It doesn't look great, it's got to be said. Losing Sara, the situation with Rowe, the body language of a lot of their players. Grant Hanley seemed disgusted almost when he was being substituted, and you've got to wonder about what exactly Torup has done behind the scenes so far and how much buy-in he's got from the players, because it didn't look like he's got an awful lot, and we'll see over the next maybe 8-9 games exactly what effect he can have on that squad.
They've got time to fix it and time to address those issues in the transfer market. Right, Kris, let's let you talk about potentially the most eye-catching result in the Championship this weekend. Sheffield Wednesday 4, Plymouth 0. We were just talking about the XG of Sheffield Wednesday. They created so many chances. It could have been 6 or 7. Was Sheffield Wednesday amazing? Were Plymouth really bad? Or was it just a bit of both?
Well, I'm not going to say Plymouth were great, but I've thought quietly during the summer, probably not quietly if you work with me, but I've thought quietly in the summer that we could be really good this season, and it was the fruition of a lot of what Wednesday fans have seen coming together over the summer, and I feel a bit sorry for Plymouth. I feel a bit sorry for Wayne Rooney. I think they will be better than people are expecting, especially after yesterday's result. People have already jumped on Rooney's back. They were doing it before yesterday, let alone having a 4-0 opening day to kind of go off. They had a couple of injuries. They've got uncertainty over their goalkeeper, over Whittaker, one of their main players. And they're playing like a side who are missing a few things. They've got time, obviously, to put that right in the transfer window. But all that said, they were harried at every possible opportunity by I thought, the most complete performance of the weekend.
Can't really argue with that. You can't argue with that. We'll talk about Rooney a bit, Conor. Awful start, obviously. He seemed quite angry afterwards with the players, and angry at the fact that he'd been preparing for this game for the last 6 weeks. He didn't get a pre-season at Birmingham. We talked about that.
Yeah, but it's just similar again. I mean, he was quite quick to jump on the players at Birmingham after one game, despite only just coming through the door. The same's happened again. I mean, understandably, like, the guy is going to be frustrated because he really wants to make it as a manager, and just at the moment things are just completely like not going for him. Obviously, he knows that his side were completely outclassed in all departments. They didn't really give him a good account of themselves. There were a lot of sloppy play for them when they did manage to get hold of the ball. Like, there were loose touches, passes just out nowhere. I mean, I remember one, there was just a clearance from defence, and it's just like, well, the centre forward was like 20 yards down the pitch, and I think it might have been Barry Bannon who came in just to pick up with ease and then just carry Wednesday forward.
He was full of praise for Bannon, actually, wasn't he? He said he ran the show, I think.
Yeah, and it was just very like disruptive for them because they just couldn't get a hold of the ball, couldn't do anything with it. And I think what also summed up their day as a whole was obviously had two players as well with their names misspelt on the back of the shirts in Forshaw and Sissoko. So yeah, just an overall very bad day at the office.
I thought apart from Sissoko, there was a lot lacking in that side, and I don't think that's necessarily Rooney's fault. There was a lot of desire missing. He wouldn't say it afterwards. He was pressed on it. He wouldn't say he was disappointed in the players and they were lacking desire. I'll say it. There were a few opportunities for them to kind of stick a good foot in and like really kind of show that they wanted the ball, show that they wanted to track a man. Morgan Whittaker didn't do it on a couple of occasions that just left them bare on the left side. And what didn't help was the great movement from Svante Ingelsson on his debut that pulled them all over the place. And like Wednesday always had options on the right side, with Valerie playing so well on debut as well. And if you haven't got your wingers tracking back and helping out, then you're going to be lost. And I don't think for a second that Wayne Rooney has been spending the last week in training saying, don't bother tracking back.
Yeah,
I think that would have been one of the first things he told them to do.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I'd also say that for Plymouth, survival is the only aim. I think we expect them to be in a relegation scrap with or without Wayne Rooney based on that squad. And Sheffield Wednesday away isn't a game that's going to define their season. We think Wednesday are going to be pretty strong this season, playoff contenders potentially. Plymouth are going to pick up... don't get carried away. I know you're top of the league now, Plymouth are going to pick up their points in the games against Derby and Blackburn and Preston and those relegation candidates, but especially at home. It's
home games. Like it's no surprise that Plymouth have lost away from home. Like the manner of the defeat and the fact that it should have been a lot more than 4-0. That's probably the surprising thing, and the lack of squad unity to kind of cover your mate and stuff like that was what was really evident. But it's not a surprise Plymouth have lost away from home. They've got such a stark record home and away over the last few years that it's still down to their home form as to whether they'll stay up. They've just got to make sure that it's better than it was second half of last season. And
is the Danny Roll Wednesday relationship going to last throughout this whole season? Are you enjoying everything?
And the next one in the Premier League and the next one in the Chapter. I don't see why not. He's got most of the club exactly where he wants it now, and I don't see him jumping ship for...
Chansiri seems to have gone a bit quiet, which is a good thing.
That's the best way to have him. The best way is when you're not having club statements every week and whatever you like we were this time last year. But yeah, when you see the kind of upward curve from last October, November, even when he'd won one of his first 7 games in charge, you could see in the performances that the results were going to come. And now that the results are coming and he's got in the players that fit what he wants to do exactly, the players have said about pre-season training going up quite a few levels, not just 1 or 2. What do you want me to say, Dave?
I want you to say you're going to win the league.
It's an amazing start.
Yeah.
I was kind of pushed a few weeks ago on what I really thought Wednesday were going to do, and I think we could go up. Really could.
I think certainly in the playoff picture this season. Leeds 3, Portsmouth 3, another absolutely belting game, another mad one in the Championship. Loads of goals, it seems. It's a good start for Pompey, isn't it, Conor? I know they potentially should have won. They took the lead in injury time. They could have lost it again when Brendan Harrison went through at the end, but it's got to be a positive start away at Leeds, picking up a point.
Absolutely, to go and face a side that finished with 90 plus points, and obviously were in a very, very tight promotion race last season. You take whatever you can get from those sorts of games, and obviously to come away thinking, should we have really lost that? I think John Mousinho will be delighted with that and just think, yes, this is the perfect start. We couldn't have asked for much more. And it's like, now we need to keep this going, because, it's always hard to judge a promoting team, especially when they've won the league of the division below, because it's like they could easily be very good. They could easily struggle with the step up. And with Portsmouth, first off, they came, obviously the first 15, 20 minutes or so in the game against Leeds, they were, by far second best, but they grew into the game as soon as Leeds kind of got a bit sloppy, and they kind of capitalised on that and getting themselves into the game, and obviously changing the shift of momentum. And I just think with that, it's so important for them now to basically build on this going into the next game, because I think that their aim is ultimate, going to be survival, obviously the same as Oxford and those others that we've already mentioned, but to get that result so early against a Leeds team that the favourites to win the league, just brilliant. It's
momentum again. It's what we said about Oxford. It's going to be so important for them carrying it into the season. Home form as well for Portsmouth. But for Leeds' point of view, they've got to see it as drop points already at this stage. Are there any concerns for you about Daniel Farker and this Leeds team early on? We're not jumping to conclusions. It's only one match. They've not lost.
Yeah. As a Sheffield Wednesday fan, going back to that, we drew 3-3 with Portsmouth on the first day of the season a couple of years ago and still got 96 points and got promoted. So, the advice to the Leeds fan is, it's the long game. Mm-hmm. That said, 7 or 8 minutes, they'd hit the bar 3 times, they'd scored the opening goal. If they just kept that momentum up, that rhythm up for another 5 or so minutes, they'd have killed that game. They'd have scored a second, they'd have absolutely killed it. They really took their foot off. It was very early to be taking your foot off, I thought. I was really disappointed in that from a Leeds point of view. And it was just the timing and the nature of the goals that Portsmouth conceded that was disappointed for them as well. Just after half time, they really just kind of stood off. Will Norris, I think, could have done better with both goals in the second half. And to give up 2 opportunities like that late on to Aronson was, I think that's a bit of a kind of learning issue for Portsmouth. They're going to have to be switched on for longer than you'd get away with in League One. But for Leeds, it's 2 points that they've really left out there, because that first, 10-15 minutes, the game should have been put to bed, and they've not done so. That said, they had a bit of a slow start last season and still came good. They're not going to have to deal with the relentlessness of Leicester and Ipswich that they did last season. So they should be okay. It's just, glaring errors at the back at the times.
Let's talk about Friday night game, Blackburn 4, Derby 2, another game with loads of goals. Conor, John Eustace, former Birmingham manager, you know what he's about. Rovers looked good against a poor side, but still conceded twice. Sammy Schmodic scored off the bench. He looks like he's still probably going to be leaving. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think Blackburn fans, if they were asked, will you see Sammy Schmodic in a Blackburn shirt come start of August, they'd be like, no. Be like, there's no chance, because after the season he had last year, you just thought, and given their financial difficulties off the pitch, you think they're going to, if a suitable offer comes in, he's going to be off straight away. It still hasn't happened, although I believe Ipswich are still interested in him, so that will probably drag out close to the end of the window. But he still looks like he's committed. Obviously came off the bench, had a real impact with a goal and an assist. So for as long as Blackburn can have him around and doing what he did last year, they'll take it.
And there seem to be concerns about Blackburn going into this season. I was putting them in the relegation mix. It's only one result, but it's a positive one, and Eustace seems to be able to organise a team at the very least to kind of compete in these sorts of games.
I suppose Conor might be better placed to say whether this is true or not. It feels generally like Eustace is more of a kind of let's be solid and nick what we can kind of manager normally. I think they came up against a pretty poor defensive side in Derby County. Again, it's that thing of the shift in momentum. As soon as Derby equalised, you got the feeling like if they can just keep that going for 5 minutes or so, keep the energy up, they've got a chance of winning it. But they just let Blackburn back in, and Andy Weimann had a big impact. Smodics obviously had a big impact, and I'm worried about what Derby are going to do at the back. They're going to concede some goals this season, and that's going to be a real problem, I think, for Paul Warne.
It's a problem he's had in the past at the Championship.
Yeah.
Obviously relegated 3 times with Rotherham already. Bit of a blunt question for you, Conor. Do you think he's going to last the season, and do you think Derby have a chance of staying up?
No, I don't, and that's purely because obviously his track record at this level isn't great, but also even last season they got promoted. Fans were not happy with him and his football, and I know. I think it was Chesterfield the other week, like their last pre-season game. They got beaten 4-0, and like the fans were like, cursing him, saying like your football's terrible, and just think, just already it's like so early, but you just think he doesn't have that much long there, especially if they play like that for the next few weeks. It doesn't look good.
The other Friday night game was Sheffield United beating Preston. Do you feel like people are still underrating Sheffield United a bit? It feels like they're progressing in the transfer window, some of the moves they're making, and they had some brilliant players on the pitch on Friday night.
Yeah, and I think people did that quite early, like even before they'd been officially relegated. I think a lot of people were saying, they've won 3 or 4 games all season in the Premier League, and they're going to struggle to kind of bounce back next season. But it kind of helped that they were relegated so early, or that they were doomed so early, because you can start to think ahead. You can start to look at what your team's going to look like. And I know they've ended up waiting quite long into the summer to make some of their changes, but they've made very kind of wise additions as well. Kiefer Moore's a great signing. I think with Callum O'Hare in there, they have that ability to make chances. I think that was the difference as well on Friday night. Preston are a side who just keep picking up results here and there without you noticing half the time in a season, whereas they didn't have those 2 or 3 kind of really big, wise kind of top of the Championship kind of type of players to swing it their way, and Sheffield United did. And yes, it was a couple of kind of free goals in a way if you're Preston. I know Ryan Lowe was saying afterwards it's a big deflection and a bit of an error on our part, but it always felt like Sheffield United had a bit more in hand.
Yeah, I think they were very strong, a very good opening for them, and I think they're only going to improve as their players settle in and all of that sort of stuff. Sunderland, big win away at Cardiff as well. Regis Labrie getting off to a winning start. Joe Bellingham was excellent in that one. I feel like if Jack Clarke is playing like that all season, they've got a real chance, Conor. Yeah,
they do. I mean, he's one of the players in the Championship from last season. You thought, he's going to be gone as soon as the summer window opens, and it's amazing that he's still there now. And really, I've not really seen much reported about any bids or interest from any Premier League clubs going in. So the fact that he's still there,
he got 15 goals in a team that was pretty poor, didn't know what they were doing in the manager situation, were all over the shop. And he's still got 15 goals last season from the left wing. He's amazing.
Yeah, he's absolutely phenomenal player at this level. And if Sunderland do manage to hold on for him, the perspective of how their season will unfold, changes massively. You have a player of that quality, you can just take games by the scruff of the neck and be a match winner on his own. It's huge. And obviously with Bellingham as well, he looks like he's really settled now after having a consistent year of Championship appearances. He's only going to be a bigger presence for them in that team now, and it's not what everyone was looking at going into the season, but it's right now I was thinking, this is a very good start for Sunderland.
Absolutely. And Tom Cleverley, we should talk a bit about him, because very young manager, obviously just taking this as his first team job, a 3-2 late win over Millwall to kick Watford's season off. Again, a lot of concern about them in some corners as we headed into the season. It seems like there's a bit of positivity within the Watford fan base about Cleverley, and if he's getting results like that, it's only a good thing. Yeah,
I think that's definitely one of the kind of storylines we're going to have to wait 15, 16 games to really kind of get a handle on, because I think there is a bit of early momentum, like you say, in the camp. There seems to be a lot of positivity, but they've played a Millwall side that were all over the place at times last season. I know they finished well under Neil Harris, but it's about backing that up now. Watford struggled as well, and we've had some people tipping them to go down, obviously, in previous episode. So, like I think as they move into the autumn a little bit, you'll start to see which kind of teams they're actually being able to pick up points from, and quite how cleverly he's able to put a team together back-to-back games when you're playing 3 games in a week and what have you, which I don't think he's really had too much since he took the job.
It's so good that he's got 3 points on the board. You know how short the fuse can be in terms of sacking a Watford manager, so at least he's got that in the bank.
There could be a club statement within 2 weeks. That's all I'm saying.
West Brom as well, eye-catching result again. I keep saying that because I think there's been some good ones. West Brom beat QPR 3-1. Josh Madger hat-trick. I don't know who saw that one coming, Conor. Corberan, we talked about the players they'd lost last week. We talked about them potentially falling out of promotion contention. He just does it again, doesn't he?
That's the thing. Like the key to West Brom having a good season is obviously Corberan. Like he did it under tricky circumstances last year. Although he still managed to have some good players, obviously like Kushu, Brandon Thomas Asante around. Obviously they've gone now, and it doesn't look imminently that those players are going to be replaced with the same calibre of quality, because obviously I think they've been put under an EFL imposed business plan now. So things are going to get worse in that scenario before they get better for Albion. But yeah, if they manage to keep Carlos Corberan, they're still in with a chance. He's one of the best managers at this level, and doesn't matter what kind of hand he's dealt, he still manages to pull results out of the bag. And Albion fans are so happy to have him.
Madger's an interesting one as well, because he came through at Sunderland and was the only man scoring goals in that terrible team. Obviously got his move over to France, I think. Now he's back. He does score goals, doesn't he? I wasn't expecting an opening day hat-trick, but if he can continue that sort of kind of form, West Brom have got a real asset, and they struggled to have a striker last season.
No, exactly. And yeah, I think he's great quality for this level. Like you say, the fact that he was putting in performances that drew attention as far and wide as they did when he was at Sunderland said a lot for him. And you only have to watch a Netflix documentary to know that they really loved him up on Wearside, and there was that fear throughout that they were going to lose him because he was too good for them, and he's come back and shown that he's still got that quality, and it's probably even better for his experiences. So he's going to be absolutely huge for them. Again, there's a bit of scepticism around what they can do this season for obvious reasons, but I don't think they'll be too far off.
With Madger though, I think with the move to Bordeaux, it didn't quite go the way obviously he would have expected. So his kind of career took a bit of a setback with his time in France, and obviously when he came back to the Championship with Albion, even though he came like last season, it's like he was still struggling to like get back up to speed. But it looks like the pre-season has done in the world of good, and if you can get that player, operating how he was for Sunderland, Albion have got an excellent talent on their hands. He
could be a better person after an experience like that as well, I think. And he was still very young and very raw at Sunderland, and he seems so far, from this weekend's evidence, that he's a bit more well-rounded than he was.
I think also having the trust of the manager and having a bit more responsibility when the likes of Thomas Asante have left is
and
mainly
injured.
Yeah, mainly on his shoulders to find the goals now. Right, don't think there's anything else to talk about in the Championship. No other games worth mentioning at all. Coventry, and obviously there was a lot of excitement heading into the season. I don't think one result should change the fact that we should be contending for the top 6, but it was a really poor performance, improved slightly in the second half. I've said we lost a 0-0 game. It was a 0-0 game by all stretch of the imagination until Stoke scored and won the game, and then we kind of fell apart, couldn't pass to a sky blue shirt, and it was really poor.
I don't know what to make of Stoke either. You could probably ask me after 44 matches, and I probably still won't know what to make of Stoke, because that was what I thought last season. Despite the managerial change, some of their performances I didn't think were that great, and they eke out the results. They're similar to Preston, they're just going to go along and pick up results without you realising a lot of the time.
They're strong in midfield. They've got Berger and other players' name who I've forgotten, and Weimhoff as well was really impressive out wide. They're going to be upper mid-table, I'd suggest, between 10th and 15th, I'd expect for Stoke, but they've got a lot of players who know what they're doing. They've got Ben Gibson now at the back. There's a lot of know-how in that side, and ultimately you can get results like that in the Championship.
And Stephen Schumacher is a unspectacular kind of presence to the outside eye as well, isn't he? And I think that helps to keep them under the radar a bit. And I don't know whether Coventry fans kind of took it for granted a little bit that their team would do better at the weekend, but yeah, I don't think Stoke could be too far wrong this season.
Yeah, it was Josh Laurent and Lewis Baker, obviously big physical midfielders, and we were dominated in the end in midfield. So yeah, good 3 points for Stoke. Let's touch on a couple of League One stories and League Two bits. League One, Conor, our League One expert. Birmingham City nearly losing their. We were talking about them going on invincible, weren't we?
I wasn't saying.
What happened to those 46 wins you kept talking about?
1-1 against Reading, rescuing a draw late on.
Yeah. I mean, in the build-up to the game, I was getting nervous because I was thinking of all the teams to face. Reading, you know, they have their off-field issues, but you've got
and then some.
and you've got a squad now that hasn't been able to be, you know, bolstered because of obviously a transfer ban. So it's a group of players that are well gelled, well drilled, like have been together a long time, know what they're doing. And honestly, in the first half, they were by far the better team. But I think on Birmingham's side, they were the players. I think the occasion, the nerves of like the expectation, it was getting to them, and you can see it in their play. But I mean, you couldn't take anything away from Reading for how they, you know, nullified us in the first half. Obviously, grew into the game in the second half, like after, you know, being a goal down, which is, you know, what you can ask for the start of a new era. You know, Alfie May, you know, just stepping up coolly to take a penalty. You know, I had no doubt in my mind that he would score just because, you know, he's such a prolific scorer at this level. The last 20 minutes of play were the best from our side in the game, and, you know, just look to build on that now because we need to have much more of a threat in the final third because we were getting some lovely patterns, building up the pitch, you know, getting to the final third. It's just then like the decision making and the final ball that was just letting us down. But I know, like, you know, given the relentlessness that Davies comes across as a person, you just know that he'll sort that sooner rather than later.
What's been the reaction online? Because when there's expectation, like there is on Birmingham to win the league, every football pundit and fans predicted them top, I think, and rightly so with some of the money spent. Has the reaction been calm to a 1-1 draw, or has it been a bit off the? I think
it's been mixed. Like, you know, we've notoriously had some fans who can go into a bit of a meltdown after one game. You know, saw it a lot last season, season before that, and, you know, but, you know, you had some people think, oh, that's terrible. I thought, you know, we were meant to be really good, but, you know, it's a new manager, it's a new style. We've got new players in. Obviously, we've signed 10 in total now. You know, it'll still take time for them to gel, completely know their roles. But, you know, there were signs that I've already mentioned that, you know, it's like you can see what we're trying to do. And as I was saying to you earlier, Simon, it's like I can't remember the last time I ever saw us having 74% possession. You know, it's just unheard of. Obviously, the bulk of it was probably in our own third, which, you know, isn't ideal. But, you know, I think from what I saw towards the end of the game, it's like, yeah, this is how he wants us to play. This is how we are going to play. I think, you know, we're going to really see the best of us after a few months rather than 1 week. So
don't take this personally, Conor, but I kind of wish Reading had held on. Just the state of that club, what they've been through in recent years, what they're still going through, like that would have been a massive result for them. And like if they can play with that much resilience, like for the rest of the season, they should be okay. But it's just, you never know what's around the corner with that club at the minute.
A manager who doesn't get spoken about enough for me is Ruben Sellers. I mean, he's doing a brilliant job.
He did quite well at Southampton.
He did pretty well at Southampton. He's taken a big risk in going to Reading. He's still there. A massive asset for them. I feel like and this is with all respect to Reading, they're probably not going to be contenders for promotion. I think he deserves another go at the Championship.
Yeah, quite possibly. But again, that's another issue for Reading. Like, they could lose one of their biggest assets in their manager. Like, it's just so unstable, the whole atmosphere around that club. You know, I've got a friend who's a Reading fan who just, it's more of a question of, are we still going to have a club at the end of the season as much as where are we going to finish? And like, for as long as the situation is like that, you're kind of willing teams to get over the line in like big performances like that. And I just hope they can play with that kind of passion and heart for the rest of the season, and they might be okay.
Other result we'll touch on in League One: Huddersfield 2, Peterborough 0. Other way around, sorry. Huddersfield were away from home. Michael Duff, we know he's a top manager, especially in League One. We're expecting a decent season from Huddersfield, but go into a team like Peterborough, who have been playoff defeatees in the last 2 seasons.
There's a few of them knocking around.
and going there and winning, and I think they were impressive, Kris.
Yeah, they look really good from what I saw, and it's not a great surprise, like you say. Duff's a great addition as manager. There were times last season where you really thought Huddersfield had something. It was rarely when Brighton Wrighter was manager. It wasn't very often when Darren Moore was manager. It felt like it's similar to Birmingham City. The kind of constant chopping and changing didn't really help them. I thought they were probably onto something when they let John Worthington and Kerr take a charge, and they've brought somebody in who might be a bit more of that ilk than Brighton Wrighter, which I don't think was a great appointment at all. And I think they're going to be one of the top 3 clubs in the league. I think a lot of people don't kind of necessarily consider Huddersfield as a big club, despite having been in the Premier League in recent times. And I think that's a pretty kind of amateurish way of looking at it. I think they were a really kind of solid club who had one bad season last year, and I think they'll be they would be a good Championship team again next year if they got there.
Agree with the Duff positivity?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken on this podcast before saying how good he is, especially at that level. And for me, I think that was the factor that made me think, yeah, Huddersfield are going to be up there this season. So I think after the way that the squad continually capitulated last year in games, I thought that was going to be a big issue. But then when you get someone who, Bill seems to be so solid and organised at the back, and so obviously go to one of the better teams of League One in the last few years and get a result like that, you can't ask for anything more to start with.
Let's go down to League Two and touch on a few talking points there. Let's talk about Darren Moore, Kris, winning with Port Vale their first game of the season. What was it like supporting a team where he was in charge, and do you think Vale are going to have they've got to be contenders for promotion, automatic promotion for me?
You'd think so. The greatest thing about Darren Moore is his ability to get people to buy into a project. At Wednesday, both seasons that we were in League One, we had a really strong squad. He was able to attract really Championship level players, and he seems to have done similar at Port Vale so far. Players like Stockley, Ben Amos, George Byers, an obvious one. He's brought in Ben Hennigan, who, if he'd stayed fit for longer at Wednesday, I think could have been a really key part of Darren Moore's plans there as well. And having seen some of the signings that he's made this summer, it comes as absolutely no surprise that they've got off to a good start and that they are being tipped to be one of the better sides in there, because it's that kind of cult of personality. Everyone loves Darren Moore and seems to want to really do their best for him. He's not always kind of tactically the best. He's not always the smartest or strongest in terms of making quick substitutions. He can kind of linger on stuff at times, but if he's got the buy-in from really good players at that level, then I don't see why they'd be too far off.
Breaking news: Preston part company with manager Ryan Lowe.
Wow! Breaking news. Let's cut to that. Thank you, producer Liam. Ryan Lowe sacked at Preston. I've backed Preston to have a very poor season. That was on the basis that Ryan Lowe would be in charge for more than 90 minutes.
You think it already?
Sorry, let's go back to that Friday night. They lost 2-0 to Sheffield United, right? It's the game I would expect them to lose going into it.
Yeah.
I do not understand a plan where you've had a manager in place last season and over the summer. There's been transfer business has been made, basically with Ryan Lowe at the helm of it. That performance, Conor, it doesn't justify sacking this early, surely. What's your reaction?
When you lose into one of the teams that are one of the favourites now, given their own transfer business and so on to go back up, you just think, that's it's just the way of the Championship. Had they lost to an Oxford United, you think, to a degree, you can see it because obviously there was a lot of fan unrest with him last year. So I think that might ultimately be where this has all stemmed from. But one game in, it's like you can't give a bloke pre-season to try, improve on last year's finish and then just be like, one game to a team that's expected to win and go up. And I think that's poor taste from the club, to be honest.
Now, Preston had a good start to last season, 6 wins out of 7. They were top of the league for a bit, and then I think they would have finished about 17th if you take their results from that after that period. So this has been in the works for a while. You'd think if they wanted to part company with Ryan Lowe, the time to do it would have been in May when he'd had those 9 months. The fact they've waited 13 weeks or whatever we've had, they've lost a game we all expected them to lose. Kris, I don't get it.
Having spoken to a Preston fan colleague of ours earlier, it was one of those, people were against him already in the summer. It's similar to what I was saying about Wayne Rooney. People have kind of already made their minds up about Ryan Lowe. they'll be pretty pleased, I think, off the back of this. But it was all quite disingenuous. They were talking about 6 games without a win and without a goal, but 5 of them were when he'd got them into a great position already, and they finished mid-table as they always do in the Championship. It's completely it's Watford-esque, isn't it?
Yes,
Watford-esque.
That's a great point. I don't understand. I mean, we've talked maybe about a few potential replacements in the form of maybe Ruben Sellers would be a good step up. We've seen that Preston, when they poached Ryan Lowe from Plymouth, don't mind doing that and spending a bit. I'm interested to know where Ryan Lowe might end up next, because this feels like this move has backfired when he was on course to get Plymouth up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a difficult one, because I understand the fans' frustration, because obviously there were times where the football was really poor to watch, but Preston, they're not blessed with resources financially, so it's kind of like they are just dealing with what they can do. So I feel like having them in that sort of upper mid-table section, I think that's great given where they are, with their current finances. But for him now, it will be interesting to see where he ends up, because before the Preston move, he had such a high ceiling supposedly, and he was one of the big up and comers in the EFL. So this will be a setback for him, but it will be then a case of, will people then look to his previous job before to think, is there still something that we can get here?
I know we were just talking about it, Kris. It reminds me of when Darren Moore was let go by Wednesday and replaced with Xisco Munoz, in the fact that Wednesday had decided, if we lose the first couple of games, we're probably going to have to get rid of him anyway and make the change. So why not do that at the start of the summer? Except Preston have done the opposite and kept hold of him and then just gone, yeah.
Well, Wednesday did it 3 weeks after a playoff final, and then took a month to replace him and left their season in shambles.
The speed of the replacement will be telling.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just wondering if Conor will be happy with Wayne Rooney back when Chris Davis inevitably goes to Preston. No, no, I think it's just absolutely shocking time, and I've commented a few times for a few different reasons on how long this pre-season was. It's been 14 weeks since the end of the last Championship campaign. If they had an inkling at any point that they might be thinking about Ryan Lowe's future, they should have done it a long time ago. We've just seen some of the performances this weekend alone. Oxford United, Sheffield Wednesday, teams that have really kind of got their idea in place very early in the summer, given the manager exactly what they've been after, and you've seen the results so far. For Preston to waste the summer basically is just ridiculous.
We've spent about 45 minutes here talking about, these are one result, let's not be too hasty, jump into conclusions or writing teams off. Preston's bored.
Didn't get the memo.
We're too patient to be owners of a club, apparently.
I just don't. Is that genuinely baffling?
In that situation as well, when when you've had players come in the summer for that manager and that specific style of play, it just it throws their futures into jeopardy as well, because it's like we've come here as well to play this way of the manager, and we've had one game with him, and now it's right, how do I fit in now, because the new guy might want to do this, and I may have no place. It's
a bad time to try and look for a new manager.
Yeah,
because you're not going to be able to poach a League One manager probably at this moment in time.
Not this early, no.
And I don't know how many managers are actually available at the minute that would be interested in taking the Preston job.
I can think of a former Huddersfield, Sheffield United, Aberdeen QPR manager who's without a job at the moment.
It's a good point.
But no, I do think it's really important that they get the right manager in place, and quickly, like you say. I do think that footballers are resilient. To take an example from my own club, Xisco Munoz, or the kind of the Wednesday system with Xisco Munoz in charge, brought in certain players at the start of last season who didn't look to be up to scratch, and then Danny Well got a tune out of them in no time at all. So I do think it's really important who they bring in and how quickly they're able to bring in their methods and get the buy-in from the players. But it's just the fact that you've wasted 3.5 months.
Thanks.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Thank you to Preston for doing it while we're recording, by the way, because we'd just been talking about them without that news. So thanks for getting that done. Let's
Plymouth Argyle, if you could just do it in the next 10 minutes.
You leave Wayne alone, right? Let's quickly touch back on League Two, because Bromley got a decent win away at Harrogate Town, their first game up in League Two. Conor, it seems like another successful season is on the cards for the promoted teams again from National League.
Yeah, but the thing with Bromley was, because obviously they went up via the playoffs, you always wondered, will the next step be difficult? But at the same time, they scored loads of goals last season. You thought if they could translate that into the Football League, I think I mentioned it in my preview actually that we did before the season, where I was saying if they can get the same number of goals out of their star players, or just as collectively as a team in League Two, I was like, yeah, they're going to be nowhere near the bottom for me. And I just think that's an absolutely outstanding start. For their first season as well in the Football League, you can't ask for any better start than that. And the momentum that they will get and the confidence gained, it will just keep going into the next week. And they'll think, we do belong at this level and we can take it to anyone.
And Harrogate Town are obviously got Simon Weaver in charge, the longest serving manager, has been there like so long now, over a decade.
He's just been sacked now.
It feels like they might struggle a bit this season. Right, we're going to round off our podcast with a few questions. We've got a feature that we're going to start implementing here called The Good, The Bad and The Ugly, where we each go around and give a good, don't just say Ryan Lowe, good, bad and ugly from the weekend's action. I'll start with my good. Because the story of the weekend for me was in League One, Crawley Town 2, Blackpool 1, nearly said Blackburn. The favourites for relegation, Crawley, sold all of their star players, written off by everyone. Scott Lindsay, he does it again. He just gets results. He could be managing 11 bin bags and he'd find points in the Football League. He is, at the moment, just proven himself to be a genius time and time again. And if Preston are looking for a manager who's in charge of a club who are in a bit of a state, Scott Lindsay, if he keeps Crawley up, he's got to be in the mix for a championship job soon. Any thoughts on Scott Lindsay, quick, Conor?
Just magic.
Just magic.
I can't wait to see 11 bin bags playing on the pitch.
I think that's why I watched us Stoke this weekend.
Scott, if you're watching, please make this come to fruition.
You're good, Kris, and then Conor.
Probably predictably, but close to home. The debut of Svante Ingelsson for Wednesday is one of the best debuts I've seen. It's certainly at Hillsborough in a very, very long time. As much as people are going to headline Rooney losing and his team looking in disarray, I thought his movement at times was absolutely fantastic. I don't know how long he'll get away with that, because it seemed to expose Barry Bannon in midfield by himself at times. But Wednesday have got a very kind of clever system of winning the ball back high, and but he was absolutely unplayable at times. And they got a rousing reception when he went off just near the end. There's
nothing better than a new player doing well,
especially somebody who's not been on anyone's radar previously. It's not like you had an expectation. He just came in and was absolutely fantastic.
Conor, good for you.
Mine is just Sunderland, because obviously last year it's widely viewed that it was a bit of a wasted year for them. And obviously there was a bit of uncertainty going into this new season. Obviously a manager that has no experience in English football, so a bit of an unknown, so hard to judge. But the way they got their victory against Cardiff, it was impressive. And obviously we've already spoken about the likes of Clark and Bellingham, and obviously if Clark especially, if he's still around past the deadline, they could be in for a good year that they had 2 years ago. So I'm thinking brilliant start for them, and I just think they're going in my good books this week.
Lovely stuff. Our bad books now. I was going to say Derby, and their performance really concerned me, just how leaky they were against a side that is not probably going to be up there this season in Blackburn. They're one of the weak championship sides. I thought if they're conceding that many chances and goals against Blackburn Rovers, how are they going to fare against a Sheffield Wednesday, for example? You'll beat them 10-0. No, I'm concerned about them, but I don't know, Ryan Lowe and Preston have just got the bad label now for me.
I think another thing to go against Derby County as well is Nathaniel Mendez-Lang last season was a massive part of their attacking philosophy, and again he was key to both of their goals. But I think in the Championship you're going to get those avenues closed off a lot more quickly, and I don't see where else they're kind of really going to build up their play. So, Warren's got a few questions to answer in that regard as well, I think.
It's going to be tough to see if he can find the solutions to those issues. Conor, you're bad?
It is Brendan Aronson for those misses late on for Leeds.
But he did score. He scored the equaliser.
I know, but you know, Leeds want to have a brilliant start, and they kind of, as Kris mentioned earlier, it's like they kind of took the foot off the pedal and they were always made to pay for it. They did manage to get the draw in the end, but I just think the game was there to be snatched at the end, and I'm sorry he scored, but bad book. I'm
not far off that on my bad. That game, as much as there were 6 goals in it, and it was a bit kind of this way and that.
It's what we love to see, Kris.
But Leeds letting Portsmouth off the hook, and then Portsmouth just the time. It's just so fundamental. Like go out there in the second half, just be on it. They weren't, and then to let the lead slip late, and then for Aronson to miss what should have been the match winner. There was a lot of kind of positives to take away for both sides in a lot of ways, but just in terms of the actual quality on display, I wasn't bought in at all.
A game nobody wanted to win, is how I'd describe that one.
Probably. If Aronson had put it in the net, Portsmouth probably make it 4-4. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then finally, the ugly. Kris, I'll let you start in this one.
Norwich City, and not because of the kit. I loved the kit. I loved that, just the creamy away kit.
Having to actually wear their away kit for once as well.
Yeah, doesn't happen often. But no, I just thought they were a team of very poor individuals on the day, and I'm not one for buying into the kind of the physical body language of a manager necessarily. I was a big lover of Sven-Göran Eriksson with England, and just thought a calm head can do it sometimes. But I thought Torrent just looked a bit short in terms of his reaction. He was slow to make changes when they needed them. Yeah, and like I said earlier, players walking around looking like they were in a huff after 10, 15 minutes. It didn't look like a good operation at all there at the minute.
And they were the players who decided to turn up.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine what the ones who don't want to play for the club are feeling like.
Conor?
Yeah, for me, it's 2 things that go hand in hand, and that's ugly and officiating. And the officiating I'm referring to is the blatant pass back from Reading against Blues.
You're going to get League One referees.
It's absolute shambles.
League One quality teams.
The biggest welcome to League One officials I've ever seen in my life.
Bad workman blames the referees.
It's terrible. Terrible.
My ugly was Steve Evans, not the man as a human, but at full time against Gary Caldwell's Exeter. They were walking onto the pitch together, and Gary Caldwell was trying to shake his hand, and Steve Evans is giving it full Steve Evans, just refusing. It was almost like the Warnock-Nuno.
Yeah.
Brilliant Steve Evans, taking the loss like every manager should.
Just
hating it. Just absolutely hating it. He's an interesting one to keep an eye on, because he's brought in all these experienced players, and he loves to create this atmosphere, but it could backfire if he's getting spiky already, right?
I love a bit of that.
Yeah.
People lauded Alex Ferguson for 20 odd years, and he had that real thing about bringing in a siege mentality. It's us against the world. Obviously, I'm not liking in Manchester United and Rotherham United. Sorry, Rotherham. But he tries to do that at clubs and kind of really get the players buying into him as a character, and more of that.
Thank you very much, Kris and Conor, for joining us on this episode of The Sportsman Untitled. Will either of you last longer than Ryan Lowe and come back next week? We'll have to wait and see. Thank you very much for watching, guys. This has been The Sportsman Untitled. Like and subscribe as usual, and we'll see you next week.